Us today. We've got Zelly Pallone from KSFR on the phone as well. So, Mr. Mayor, try to speak into the. But Daniel, Mark, thanks for being here, and thanks for all of you others for being here as well. We just wanted to give folks an opportunity from the media to sort of boil down right to the heart of what the meeting tomorrow is about, what the symposium is about, and what this issue is about. And then how we're going to approach it here in the city of Santa Fe, how the conversation is going to look, how it's going to be shaped, and then give you a chance to answer any questions or ask any questions rather that you might have about public banking or the symposium in a sort of more open access way than through the symposium tomorrow. So thanks for joining us, and I'll turn it over to the mayor to get started.
Thanks, Matt, and appreciate it, Daniel and Mark, for y'all being here. And I do want to welcome Councilor Nick Licata. Is that the right way to say it, Councilor? Thank you for joining us, City Councilor from Seattle. So glad you're here, and hopefully we have a weekend full of lots of sun for you.
Looking forward to it.
That's great. and also, when introduce, I'm sorry.
Christopher Cogswell, he's the chair of our board at the Public Banking Institute.
Great, Christopher, welcome. Glad you're in Santa Fe as well. So you know, to the local press, they've heard me say this during the campaign, but I think it's important to frame the issues that I see in Santa Fe and the challenges, and use it as a way to talk about this weekend. You know, we can start with some of the basic challenges. For all of what's going great in Santa Fe, being a world destination when it comes to arts and culture, we truly have become a tale of two cities. We have, when you look at the income gap between the highest wage earners and the lowest, we're no different than many cities across America. It has gotten larger. And so the important thing that we have to think about when we look to the future is what can we do to assure that we begin to rebuild the middle class in Santa Fe. And part of rebuilding it is about making sure that we have a strong education system, making sure that we have access to high-paying jobs that offer social mobility, and also making sure that we in Santa Fe have the opportunity to live to our full potential and recognize our full potential, which means not only access to a good education system, but access to a very vibrant economy. The challenge in Santa Fe has been that we have been highly concentrated in two industries, government and arts and culture and tourism. And what that has meant in many respects is that our economy has been very stagnant. And in fact, when you look at the GDP numbers over the last 10 years, since the recession started, actually at least in 2008, we've definitely have flattened in those two employment bases, and we've gone down in areas that have actually helped sustain the economy and grow it year over year, like construction and financial services. So when we look to the future of regrowing our middle class and trying to have an economy that works for everybody, you have to think about capital. You have to think about access to capital and creating an environment of entrepreneurship where everyone can succeed. One of the biggest fallouts of 2008, the biggest tragedies, is that Main Street really suffered as a result of the tightening credit limits that the federal government imposed on banks. And in fact, when you look at the largest banks, I believe the data suggests that there's 53% less lending taking place with small businesses. And so, while we see this move in the economy again, and we're moving back up, there are still a lot of people on Main Street that are being left behind. And we don't have to look far in Santa Fe to know that there are still businesses that struggle to grow. They struggle because of partly our economy isn't moving as quickly as it needs to move, and then they struggle because they don't have access to capital to expand and to position themselves to participate in global markets. We also have problems with our infrastructure. We have not deployed broadband to the levels that we need to throughout the city. In fact, Santa Fe commercial and residents will pay about the same amount of money that individuals in Albuquerque pay for half the bandwidth of speed, for half the speed. You're not going to be able to grow an economy if your technology infrastructure isn't in place to help position small businesses for participating in a global economy. And so that means that we have to find more dollars for public investment in broadband technology. We need to find more dollars for public investment in early childhood development. We have to find more dollars for public investment in job training and programs that take kids that are on the verge of dropping out and put them back into school. And give them pathways to some type of degree or position them to enter the workforce and have the skill set to be successful. All those investments have to come from non-traditional sources. Here at the city, we're highly capped or maxed on our gross receipts taxes. We've purposely tried to keep property taxes low as best we can through our mill rate, because we don't want the residents to have to bear the burden of more government. So when you think about the future and the roles that mayors play across this country, and certainly the role I want to play here in Santa Fe, is that we have to become innovators. We have to think outside the box. We have to look for non-traditional ways to meeting the critical needs of our community. And during the campaign, I had an opportunity to catch up with an old friend. Craig has been a friend since my days on the county commission, and in those days was advocating for strong public investment in open space and in conservation. And Santa Fe County at the time, as you know, was a leader in developing an open space program, and we know when those investments were made by the public, what it did to help transform communities across the county. And so I've had an enormous amount of respect for him, and so when he invited me to coffee during the campaign and he brought up the idea of the public bank, it's something that I had heard about in North Dakota, but really hadn't thought about here in New Mexico or in Santa Fe. And as I got more into the campaign and learned the stories and the challenges of Santa Fe, and recognized that access to capital and new funding sources were limited, the idea of the public bank became more and more important to me. And it became one of those areas that I felt that it was important that we explored if I had the opportunity to be mayor of Santa Fe. And so shortly after March, when I took office, my friend was one of the first in my office to say, okay, Mayor, what do we do now? And so we've started this process, and I want to finish my statement by saying where the city is, and then I'll ask Craig to make some remarks, and then some of the individuals up here to talk to you a little bit about their perspective of this weekend. But the city, as I stated earlier, and with the support of Craig and many others, is going to take a very slow, methodical approach to understanding and determining the feasibility of a public bank here in Santa Fe. We are not going to rush into anything, but we are going to move forward in learning and being serious about understanding how to develop a bank in Santa Fe, and being honest about whether we can truly pull it off or not. And that remains to be seen. And right now we have proposals in to assist the city in determining the feasibility of whether a bank could actually be pursued here at the local level. Individuals on that review team are, as you can imagine, since we haven't really done public bank, are going to be the city manager. We've asked the county manager. We've asked a private sector individual who understands finance. Among some of the individuals to be a part of the review team for selecting a consultant, because we have to get it right. We have to have a consultant in place that can be very good about answering the question that we have. First and foremost, can we do this? And the second is, how do we do it if we can? And three, what are the risks to the community if you actually develop a bank? So we expect that process will take 4 to 6 weeks to conclude before we, probably sooner than 4 weeks by the time we announce who that consultant will be, and then some period of time after to have them actually come up with a report. So having said all that, this weekend is really going to be about inviting the citizens to come alongside their government to learn about public banking and what it means. And the folks at Banking on New Mexico, Craig and others, have taken this initiative entirely upon themselves to organize, to promote, to fund this weekend's efforts so that the community can come in and learn what we're learning and understand what we're trying to understand about what can a public bank do to help us move our economy forward. And in closing, one of the most, as I've thought about public banking and what it means to Santa Fe, and certainly what it can mean to New Mexico, at the end of the day, it really is about banking and betting on your community if we're able to actually put this bank into place. Right now, our reserves, our bank is, I believe it's Wells Fargo, it's one of the national banks, do a great job for us. They serve the city according to our contract. But they also take city revenues, taxpayer dollars, and they use those taxpayer dollars as part of their loan portfolio that goes to other places outside of Santa Fe and certainly outside of New Mexico. And when you think about that just most basic concept of taxpayer money being used to earn revenues for national banks that have reduced their small business lending by 53%, you have to pause and wonder, is this the best structure for our community? Does this make the most sense when it comes to the public's money that we're participating in this effort? And so we owe it to the public to look at ways to keep the money in our community, to reinvest it in our community, to bet on our community, and their ability to succeed, and to do so in a way that protects the taxpayer. I think you certainly can have that all. You can be in a, as the experts will tell you, in a public bank, you can be in a regulated environment that assures that there is protection of the public's funds. So having said all that, I want to thank Craig for being here. He's up here with me with We Are People here. Gwen Hallsmith is with the Public Banking Institute. She's the executive director. I'd like to welcome to Santa Fe and to New Mexico, Dr. Thomas Keitel, is that correct? Head of the German Savings Bank, and of course Nicole Lykin, who is with We Are People here. So maybe what we can do, Craig, is you can talk a little bit about this weekend, and then we can ask Gwen and Dr. Keitel to briefly share some of their perspectives, because I'd like us to be able to answer questions of the press, if that's all right.